So you may find yourself looking for a car on Turo and you are deciding whether you want to go with a host with a larger fleet with many vehicles or someone with a small fleet or maybe even just one car. Today I want to talk about the good and bad of someone with a larger fleet versus someone with less vehicles or a smaller fleet. So without further ado, let's get into it. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another video. So today, as I mentioned, I want to be able to help you make an informed decision when it comes to renting a car on Turo and deciding on a host with a larger fleet or deciding on a host with a smaller fleet or less vehicles. So when I talk about a larger fleet, I'm talking about somebody that has more than 25 vehicles. That's a pretty good number as far as they're now getting to the point where they have to get a management company to be able to look into the cars for them, and they are more set up as a company where one person is in touch of all the operations and there are people underneath that person that is doing all of the day-to-day operations of taking care of the vehicles and the cleaning. And then of course the small fleets are going to be those with 24 vehicles or less. Now, as a host with only 10 vehicles myself, and I say only 10, I do know that there are benefits to hosts with less vehicles, but I also want to be able to talk about those hosts out there that have multiple vehicles, maybe over 100 vehicles. So I want to get into those as well, so this way you have the ability to make the best decision overall. So without further ado, let's talk about the hosts. So let's get into the larger fleet first. We want to talk about the good and the bad of that. Then we'll go into the smaller fleet or those with just one vehicle or maybe a couple of vehicles and talk about the good and the bad of that as well. So with a host that has a large fleet, the number one benefit that I would say you would get out of someone like that is experience. A host with a large fleet has dealt with multiple situations, from total losses to guest violations to different aspects of a trip that needed assistance. That host is going to have a lot of experience as far as being able to handle any type of situation and know what to communicate with you. So definitely experience plays a role when you're looking at a host with a larger amount of vehicles. Now, the number two reason to book with a host with more vehicles would be they have a system in place that is going to be a fail-safe system for you to be able to obtain your vehicle. So you're not going to run into many situations where you're going to pick up the car and there's a big problem. They have done enough of these trips, kind of ties into the experience aspect, that you're going to know what to expect. You're going to expect basically the same thing every time. So definitely a good system in place as far as allowing you to access the vehicle without any major issues. And number three, I would say, as far as a larger fleet host, would be having a variety of vehicles with one individual. So there is a host here in the Jacksonville area that has more than 100 vehicles. And when you look at that person's fleet, they have everything from compact vehicles to minivans to sports cars to luxury cars. You name it, they have every single different type of vehicle that you have to choose from. So you don't have to look elsewhere as far as finding a different host when you're looking at someone with a larger fleet, because chances are they have the vehicles that you're looking for. Now, to talk about the disadvantages of going with someone with a larger fleet, I would say the number one thing would be a lack of knowledge of the cars as far as being able to get into every single one of them and know what they are all needing as far as cleaning, as far as maintenance, you name it. Those are going to be things that if someone is managing a large fleet of vehicles, that they are not going to necessarily know every aspect of what the cars are like. For example, when someone is detailing the cars for the host, chances are the host may not be getting into these cars, especially if they have a quick turnaround. So sometimes the cars may smell like smoke, and that's a risk that you would be willing to take if you are booking with a larger host, is that the individual that is overseeing those vehicles or the company that's overseeing those vehicles may not necessarily know how dirty a car may be or whether a car needs maintenance. Now, while I say there's a system in place for a host with a larger amount of vehicles, there still can be an opportunity for them to miss things as far as having so big of a fleet that they can't manage it. We have as hosts seen large hosts dissolve because they were not able to manage their vehicles properly, or their ratings started to tank because they had too many vehicles and were not able to oversee all of it. So just because you see a host with multiple vehicles on their profile, it does not mean that they are always getting it right. So look out for the ratings and see what the renters are saying as far as access to the vehicle, things like that. I said no major issues. There may be some minor hiccups that you might run into along the way, so definitely keep that in mind when you're looking at a larger fleet. I almost want to push this part to the top of my list because this is part of what makes Turo what Turo is a lack of extras. So when you have a host with one vehicle or two vehicles, you're able to say, hey, why don't you book a few extras while you're with me? What do I mean by extras? Things like beach gear, camping equipment, chairs, coolers, car seats. Those are the types of things that make Turo a different entity from everything else. Yes, child seats you can get from the big rental car companies, but a lot of the other extras that are offered, like strollers, those are things that a Turo host can offer you if you find the right host. When you have a host with a large amount of vehicles, it is a lot harder for them to be able to offer those extras because they are not able to fulfill all of those extras between every single order because they don't know who needs what. I know if I hosted over 100 cars, it would be very hard for me to offer extras. So I definitely can relate and understand why somebody with a larger fleet may not be able to offer those extras. But that is something to look out for, is if you're looking for things that are gonna ease your stress as you are booking your trip, and you're wanting to find something like extras, a host with a larger fleet of vehicles may not necessarily be the way to go for you. And I'd say number 4 on the list of disadvantages of those with the larger fleet is communication. Now, you do have one individual that's doing all of the communication, and sometimes there may be multiple people in that pot as far as communication, but there can be some times when you are losing communication with that particular individual because they are managing such a large fleet that maybe you're not getting a response as quick as you would want to. So if you're expecting top of the line, up to the minute communication, then a larger fleet host, if you are seeing anything in the ratings that say that this host is not the best at communicating, then maybe that's not the route for you to go. Now, for those with the smaller fleet or for those with just 1 or 2 vehicles, I'm gonna talk about the disadvantages first because this is, I believe, where my category falls as far as me being a host, and I really wanna talk about the good stuff. I want to save the best for last. I'd say the number 1 thing to look out for when it comes to those with a smaller fleet or less vehicles is a lack of experience. Now, this can go from somebody that is listing a car for the first time or somebody that has 15 trips or 20 trips. Regardless of what that may be, they are going to have less trips than a big power host with multiple vehicles. So keep that in mind when you are booking a vehicle with somebody that has a smaller fleet, because there is a possibility that maybe they run into a situation with you that they've never dealt with before. Now, I believe communication is a really big thing, especially for someone like me. I have a little over 700 trips, so I consider myself to be pretty experienced, but you're never going to hear me say something like, oh, I've never dealt with that before, because I don't want somebody to be feeling uneasy about a situation that I'm dealing with them and making them feel like they're not going to know what to expect. That's something I learned a long time ago in the workplace, is to never tell somebody you've never dealt with this before, because that does not instill confidence in a guest when you are telling them something like that. But the reality is, you're gonna deal with a host that has never dealt with a certain type of experience before, and they may vocalize that to you as well. I'd say the number 2 disadvantage of booking with a smaller fleet or a host with just a few cars is a lack of diversity among vehicles. Like maybe you look at a host and you see their ratings and you're like, I really like this host, I really wanna book with them, and you start going through their vehicles and trying to look for dates and you can't find any. I've had that happen before, where I've had people email me or I've had people message me and they say, hey, I'm looking to get a car from this date to this date. What do you have available? And I'll have, unfortunately, absolutely nothing. So I, in turn, have to turn those people away and they have to go book with a different host, and, you know, that's business lost to me. But at the same time, I mean, I do have other bookings that are already on the radar, but that's the reality, is when you have a host that has less vehicles, you may not be able to go back to that same host again if they don't have enough vehicles available. Now I'll get into the good parts of having somebody with a smaller fleet. So number one, I'd say, is a more personable experience. So I pay as much attention as I can to what a guest is here for, what is their trip about, and try to relate to that as much as possible. The bigger the amount of fleet, the bigger the amount of vehicles I get, the harder it is for me to be in touch with that. But the reality is people are here for anniversaries, people are here for birthdays, people are here for funerals, people are here for just a vacation. People are here for more reasons than one, and the more in tune and involved you are with that, then the better the experience is from my perspective. So when you are booking with a smaller host, they are able to pay attention and pick up on things like that and be able to make the experience that much more personable. Now, I'm not saying somebody with a large fleet can't do that. They very well can, and they very well could still have good communication with you. But as far as the more personable experiences, it ties into the other big advantage that I feel is essential for somebody with a smaller fleet or somebody with less vehicles would be extras. Now, we have a ton of different types of extras that you can book with our cars. We have beach wagons, we have coolers, we have strollers, we have car seats, we have anything that you can think of. People have even asked me if I have extras, and I will go and buy it so that they can get the extra if that's something that they would want with their trip. And to me, that makes the experience that much more personable, because now I know why you're here and I'm able to cater to your trip a little bit more. The next part I would say is definitely more being in tune with our vehicles. I know all 10 of my cars. I know when they need oil changes. I know when they need tire rotations. I know when they're broken. I know when they need things fixed. So I am always on top of my cars and making sure that they are in the best possible shape. If a guest tells me anything that may be wrong with the car, I am on top of it and I am trying to fix it as fast as I possibly can, so this way the next guest does not have anything to say. I do not wait until it gets to a point where a car is unmanageable and it has to be retired from the fleet in order for us to finally fix the problem. And the last part is communication. Again, with a larger fleet, it might be harder for you to get a response quickly because maybe they're managing multiple vehicles. But when it comes to smaller hosts, those that have less vehicles on their fleet, then you are likely to get a response quickly. I'm not going to say everybody with less vehicles will respond quickly. There are people that are learning that will have problems with communication, and they need to know about that. But if you have somebody that has a little bit of experience, I have 10 vehicles, I have 700 trips, I'd consider my fleet to be smaller compared to some others, but the communication that you are going to get from me is going to be top notch. I'm going to make sure and respond to you as fast as I possibly can, and you will get the answers to your questions quickly and in an orderly fashion. So know that communication can be a big thing when it comes to a host that has less vehicles, because they have more opportunity to listen to your message and more opportunity to listen to you. Now, a lot of the things that I mentioned tie into the video that I did a couple of weeks ago about the top 5 things to consider on Turo when you are renting a car. So I invite you to check out that video because it does talk about other things to consider when you are booking the car. So if you decide at this point whether you want a small fleet or a large fleet, or you're trying to figure out how to be able to find that, scroll to the host and click on their name, and you'll be able to view all of their vehicles and see how many they actually have. This gives you a good idea of how many vehicles they are actually managing before you make that decision. Once you've made the decision on whether you want a large fleet or a small fleet, or you figured out the host that you want to go through, then go look at that top 5 things to consider before renting on Turo, because that helps you figure out whether you are ultimately going with the right host or not. Now again, my goal of these videos is to be able to communicate with guests that are on Turo. There are so many people out there that are talking to the Turo hosts, and I still will continue to occasionally talk about different things that are happening with the business as a Turo host, but I believe that there is an open space for Turo guests that are considering booking on Turo and haven't pulled the trigger yet or want to know more about it. So if that is you, please leave a comment down below and talk to us about what you want us to cover next. We'd love to give you something that you feel will help you make a decision when it comes to travel, when it comes to booking your rental car. So this way you are having the best experience possible on the Turo app, and you are able to comfortably say, I prefer Turo over all those big rental car companies. Now, with that being said, that is going to do it for today. We thank you all so much for watching. And if you like this content, please give it a big thumbs up and consider subscribing if you like what you're watching. And again, leave a comment if you have anything you want us to cover. If you're looking for a rental car in Jacksonville, visit AtchooRentals.com. We have everything from small compact cars, and we still have that beautiful minivan, and we are at 10 vehicles and counting. Thank you all for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day.